Good afternoon. Hope everybody's having a good day, staying safe, staying healthy. Before we start, I got a couple of thank yous to do. We have to thank ASTC, the American Society for Theater Consultants. We had Zoom meeting functionality here in the office, but with a generous donation through ASTC, they allowed us to expand into this webinar portal, which is much more effective for what we're trying to do. And I'd also like to give thanks to the last 2 minutes of that video that you saw was built by Joe Payne. He's the commissioner for our Digital Media Commission. He built that content for our conference, unable to use it, but we're using it here. So we want to thank Joe Payne for that. Again, I want to say a very good afternoon to everyone and welcome to the USITT Forum at 4. Welcome to my home, den/laundry room. My name is Christine, and I'll be your host for today's Forum at 4. These sessions will be offered every Monday through Thursday at 4 Eastern Time we're up to about mid-May in scheduling now. Although our conference may have been canceled due to this COVID-19 pandemic, our commitment to education and training has not and will not stop. Every Monday through Thursday, USITT will bring you at least 2 educational sessions. New at noon. If you haven't seen one yet, I suggest you stop by, register from the website. It's kind of like our new product showcase that takes place every year at the annual conference, Stage Expo. Companies and exhibitors who were set to exhibit their latest tech will now take the virtual stage instead to explain what the product is and to answer questions that participants have. These webinars will be streamed live on Zoom, as well on the USITT Facebook page, if that becomes a little more convenient. Those are a lot of fun. I suggest you tune in for some of them. These Forum at 4 series will take a selection of sessions that were to be held at USITT 2020 in Houston and translate them to our new virtual environment. These webinars are brought to you by various USITT commissions, presenters, and exhibitors. These webinars will be streamed just on Zoom, so you do have to pre-register for those. You can find more information and weekly offerings and register for them on our website, www.usitt.org. We refresh the schedule every Thursday, so the upcoming schedule for next week might not be complete yet, and we'll try to get it done by this Thursday, and then we'll put out a schedule on Facebook so you can stay in touch there. So today's Forum at 4 session is Find It, You Can't Use It, and it's being presented by Margaret Messick of Costume Inventory Resources. Margaret, before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and a brief overview of what we'll be learning about today?
Hi, as she said, my name is Margaret Messick. I am the owner of Costume Inventory Resources. I write and develop inventory software for theater companies and dance companies and lots of other groups around the world to inventory their costumes, props, lighting equipment, sound equipment, and whatever else they happen to have. I also print inventory tags and labels, which you'll see a few of today as well. This presentation is to talk not about necessarily my software and tags, but to talk about why an inventory database is helpful to you and what you can accomplish with it and how to get started with the process. It's a big project to create a new database or create an inventory for your theater, but the benefits are great. So we will talk about the stages you go through to present, create a proposal and present that to administration to get all the resources that you need.
Great. You're all set there for a second, Margaret? Yeah, let me just talk to our audience for another second. What we're going to do is, if you have questions and answers, I'm sorry, I'm reading my notes, and you might also hear my cat chime in when I'm unmuted, and I apologize. It's feeding time. I tried to take care of him. Hopefully my cat goes away. You won't hear him during the presentation. But we want to talk about questions and answers. I prefer you can chat amongst yourselves in the chat box. but look down at the bottom of your screen. There's a Q&A box, and I'd prefer all questions to go into the Q&A box so I can monitor them. Margaret will stop once in a while for questions, or we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. Everybody will receive, anybody registered will receive a recording of this. I think that's all the housekeeping notes we have to cover. Margaret, it's all yours.
Great, thanks, Christine. All right, what we want to look at here is I've got a few PowerPoint slides and a few other demonstrations to show. I'm not 100% sure if you can see that, but if you can, this is the opening here. If you can't find it, what will you use on stage?
We can see it just fine, Margaret. You're all set.
Okay, great, thank you.
Your slide just advanced.
Okay, only you can turn a stage from a dark and silent floor to a dazzling scene. We know that all stages look pretty plain and basic when you start with, but once you start putting a production together, you get something totally different. But if you can't find the right costume or the prop or the furniture or the microphone or the lights, how will you do it? You don't want to make or buy everything again. The best thing is to be able to find everything and put it into use at the right time. So what can an inventory system do for you? An inventory system can allow you to create records for each item, do searches on a variety of criteria to see what you have in stock, and be able to find where it is, find where it's stored, and be able to access it. You can be able to print reports on paper or PDF to share information with others. You can do rents or loan or checkout, however you want to term it. You can check out those items to other organizations and keep track of where everything is. Every week I get a call from somebody saying, we loaned something to somebody and we can't remember who it was or when it was supposed to come back. So by setting up a good rental system, you're taken care of there. You can assign items to a production and create a production catalog so you know what is going to be needed for that particular production, and you can create asset management reports. So I just want to step out briefly to the theater inventory database just to show you a couple things really quick. This is the opening menu for the theater database. Like we'll talk about in a few minutes, there are many other options for you besides my database. There are online versions. There are a few more specialized versions, but this is the one we have to look at today, so we're going to take a quick look at it. So if I go to costume pieces and I go to the costume piece menu, I can take a quick look at a particular record that I have here. I have a tag ID, I have a name, I have lots and lots of descriptions, I have one or more photos that are here, and I also have a main storage location, I have a detail storage location, and I can have location notes. Okay, so I can make sure I know where it is. And if I look up here at the top, I have a current location. I can say, okay, well, I know the storage location from the storage location field, but where is it now? So I can have a quick idea of where things are. So a good record for costumes, for props is very helpful. If I want to do a really quick search, I can search on an item by a tag ID, or I can search for an item by name, by description. I can do a lot of different searches. I can do a search, let's say, for all dresses, and I will get a list. I can do a picture, view a picture of each one. I can print those reports out. There's a lot of different things I can do once I have the data in the database. So, detailed information here, searches. I can also do a checkout for an item. I can create a checkout to performers, or I can do a rental to other organizations. And I can create a new checkout record here. And I can check something out to myself. And I can come down here and I can do a quick checkout for any item that is currently not checked out. Once I add those items, I can print a report, a brief receipt, one with photos, with fees, with no fees, lots of different things. And I can figure out where things are going. I can run a lot of reports. And then quickly, just the last thing is something that's new in the database is you can run asset management reports. Once you have all this data in there, you've got a lot of good information to report. So for costume pieces, I can say I have 368 pieces with a value of $12,000 and a replacement cost of $17,000. And I can print this as a report for all of my items, or I can print individual items that I want. So in cases of insurance or for your university who wants an asset management list, it's very quick and easy to prepare that. Okay, so let's go back to here. We can do a lot with a database. So where do you start? Well, first off, we want to look at these specific steps. First off, you have to identify what is your real goal for inventorying your collection. And then you start your planning, then you make some preliminary decisions and stick to them. That's one of my great points I want to emphasize today, is because a lot of people make a decision, they get busy, they go on to other projects, and then they forget about them, and they come back and they start making new decisions again. It can waste a lot of time. Then you need to become the expert with your whole inventory system, with the database you've picked and with the system you want to set up. Then you want to train your staff and students. You want to look critically at your storage area to make sure it's set up correctly. Then you want to set your schedule and get started. So first off, let's talk about your goal or motivation for inventorying the collection. Okay, is it to get organized to make better use of your costumes and props? Do you want to stop having the questions and sitting around going, oh, I know we had that from 2 or 3 years ago, where is it now? That's one good reason for having an inventory. Do you want to generate revenue from rentals? That's another good reason to have a good rental system and charge for individual pieces. Is your theater director or department chair or your high school principal requiring you to do it? Well, that's still a good reason to get it done, because the people in charge want to know what you've got. Or to teach your students new skills. There's a lot of new skills you can teach your students, and it's a very helpful and good skill for them to take on when they move on from your organization. So once you recognize your goals and you make your goals known, it's easier to get the funding and the equipment and the support you need. If you go to someone, say your boss, and say, I want this inventory system, and they say, why? If you could articulate 4 or 5 goals for them, it makes it much, much easier to get approval. Okay. Let's start by planning your project. First off, realize that this is a project. A lot of people don't like the word project, because it sounds like a lot of work, but it is. So like any project, it has a planning phase, a budget. You have to find a source for your software, hardware, inventory tags and labels, and you have to find people to help. You really can't do this all on your own. So let's talk about gathering some information about your theater that will help you start with your planning phase. A lot of people want to know why you want to spend a lot of money on inventory. Well, if you can articulate how many productions you do a year, how many students are involved with all aspects of the production, whether they're in costumes or props or stage management, anything that has to do with the production, you want to be able to know how many there are. How much revenue do you bring in from ticket sales or donations? How are community members involved? Do you do shows for schools or organizations or the general public? You want to show that your theater is really active and productive, and that many students and community members benefit from the theater. And then let's make some estimates. How many of each group do you think you have? What do you think the value is? You won't know until you actually create the inventory and put all the data in, but if you can make some estimates, it'll get you a good start. So do you have costumes, wigs, jewelry, props and sets, lighting equipment, sound equipment, tools, consoles, stage properties, anything else you can think of? Let's try and come up with some basic numbers so that you can put that in your proposal. Then you want to be able to list the benefits of having an inventory. So what will the benefits be? It will provide an accurate count of your costumes and props. It will give you the ability to search for costumes and props. It will give you the ability to plan and prepare for productions, knowing what you have. A lot of people will work with a costume or prop designer, set designer who's not local. So if they call you and say, okay, what have you got from World War II era uniforms, you can run a search and run a report, create a PDF, email it to them, and that enables them to know what you have. So they can say, okay, I've got this for these particular items already, so I only need to make 10 or 20% of the items I need for the production. So that helps you plan and prepare for your productions a lot better. Another benefit is to set up a rental program to generate revenue and track where everything is, and the opportunity to teach students new skills. So be able to articulate benefits that the inventory system will give you, and I'm sure you can come up with a few more, but this is a good start. Hang on a second here. Okay, what are some of the skills that your students can learn? Now, this can be students in high school and college. It can be volunteers or local students who are working in a community or professional theater. So these are just skills everyone can learn. But computer skills, how to operate a database, how to create a rental record, print out receipts, all that kind of good things. Costume and props and sets knowledge. We'll talk about how to set up your details in your costume and prop records here in a few minutes. And if someone just says, okay, I've got a blue dress, well, that's nice information, but it's not enough. You want to know what it's made out of, what time period it is, what style of dress it is, a lot more details. And so as students are required to, or volunteers required to put that information into the database, they will certainly grow a lot in their knowledge of all the things used in the theater. So students will also understand what inventory management is in terms of being able to record things, find things, run reports. They'll also be able to work with customer relations, especially if they're working with rentals or if they're working with other members of the theater and someone comes to them and says, what have you got, in oak chairs? Well, they can work with that person and provide them information. And then photography. I have a little sort of easy little diagram here on the side here, but to do a good costume or prop photo, you need to be able to set up a little bit of a photo area and a photo station, have some lights, have a camera, figure out your angles. And it's not easy. Believe me, I see a lot of not so great photography of costumes and props I work with people in their records. And everyone wants a good picture, but not everyone knows how to take a good picture. All of our 20-somethings are out there with their phones taking pictures a million times a day, but a good photo is going to have a little bit of thought put into the area. So this is another skill that they can learn. All right, are there any questions, Christine, that I should be looking at right now?
No, Margaret, we did have a comment going back to when you mentioned keeping track of your inventory. Somebody had the great comment to say it's also great to keep track of your inventory so you can ditch items that you're rarely using anymore. So yeah, they're out there agreeing with you.
Okay, wonderful. But you're right. Yes, you can mark items that you don't need anymore as discarded, but you can still keep the record in the database. Even if the costume is worn out or the prop and their set piece is broken, you can still keep track of what you don't use anymore, but it doesn't sort of clutter up your collection there. Okay, so let's talk about the inventory database project plan. I have this great little diagram here that shows you that your inventory project is made up of 6 parts. You have software. You've got to have some type of software. We'll talk about that in a minute. You have to have some sort of identifier for each item so that you can recognize what it is. You obviously have to have a computer to keep track of this. You have to have storage facilities where your costumes and props are. You obviously have to have money to make this all work, but it doesn't really work unless you have people. Your people are your most important part because you're the people that come up with the ideas of how to set this up, the people that do the actual work of identifying and tagging and labeling everything, data entry, and keeping the database current and going. So everything's important, but as you can see, that the people are what ties it all together. Okay, so for your people, let's talk about that. People are the most important part, but who's in charge, okay? An inventory project needs to have at least 1 or 2 people who are at the helm of the whole project. So what staff, volunteers, and students are available? How much time can they commit to the project? When are they available? So when you start thinking about this, you've got to say, okay, I've got to have someone in charge, but I've got to have lots of other people to help. So when are they available? Well, right now, as you can know, nobody's really available, but hopefully by this summer, you will have people being able to come back into your shops to help you do the inventory. How much training will they need? You have to assume that everybody needs a little training. Some people need a lot, some people don't need so much, but everyone needs to be trained at least how your inventory system is going to work, what your storage setup is, and everything. So who in the organization also has to approve the project? Who do you need to convince to allocate funds and resources? So there's lots of people you need to think about. People in the shop, people out, people in administration, lots of different things. And software, how will you store your records? In a database, in a spreadsheet? What functions do you want in the software? Do you want to include photos? Do you want to have, who do you want to have access to the data? And how much control do you want them to have? So again, I'm going to just switch over here to my database here. And there, like I said, there's lots of other products out there, not just mine, but if you have a spreadsheet, everyone knows what a spreadsheet is. It's just a file with rows and columns. And while it's great for a lot of things, it doesn't allow you as much flexibility and control as a database. So like here with a tag ID up here in the upper left-hand corner, I can force that in the database to be a unique number so that I don't get duplicate numbers. I can also come down here to my costume types. I can create a drop down so that I can make sure that everyone, when they want to put in a shirt, they spell shirt the same way. You have no idea how many different ways people spell, color names. Even black and white get misspelled if someone's typing them in. Whereas in a database, I can have a drop down here and I can easily select something off my list. Now also with a database, not a pinstripe, sorry. Also with a database, all of these drop down table fields that I have are based on a table. And I can go here to my utilities function and I can come here to my color table and you can see that I have got all these different colors. And if I wanted to add a new color to my list, I could. So again, it allows me to have control, but it allows it to be more flexible. So a database allows you to have a lot more options for you and be able to do searches more efficiently, add photos easily so that you can look at a photo. I can double click on it. I can take a good look at it and say, wow, okay, that's a white cowboy shirt with a red yoke. I can do a lot. So let's come back here to our spreadsheet, or our thing here.
Margaret, do you have time for questions?
Sure,
Yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. So this first question comes, they know your answer will vary greatly, but is there a rough idea how long it takes you to photograph and inventory X number of costume pieces? In other words, how many items can one reasonably expect to photograph and inventory in, say, an hour? Did any of your clients discuss that with you?
Oh, all the time. Here on my website, I have a number of links, and I have I have a handout that's already there called Suggestions for a Costume Inventory Day. You can use it for props as well. How long it takes to photograph and inventory, say 100 costumes, really depends on how organized you are to start with. I like to encourage people to have stations. So I'm going to have my costume area, my storage area, and I'm going to have a runner bring in a rack of costumes. Now the same thing could be a cart of small props could be done as well. You bring that to a photo station where you have it already set up and quickly make a couple of photos, and then those items move on to the data entry station. Now, the data entry station, how long it takes to enter data really depends on the skill and the knowledge of the person entering the data. If I have someone who really knows the costumes, knows the time period, knows the fabric, and can enter that data quickly, they can enter a record in less than 30 seconds. If someone has to stop and say, I wonder what size this is, or I wonder this, or I wonder that, that time eats up a lot of, that questioning eats up a lot of time. Then you have your next group of items move on to where you either sew a costume tag in or iron it on, or if it's a prop, you can do a label into it. But you have a station here where people are just doing that. As something comes through, you put a label on it and you move it along, and then it gets returned to the storage. Now, I had one group of a ballet company who really knew their costumes well and were extremely motivated. And they did over 500 costumes in a day. Now, they had 1 or 2 people at each station, and they just kept moving along and working through this as quickly as they could. But again, it depends on how organized you are to start with. You've got your station set up, you know how the photos work, you've got someone working at the computer that really knows how to do it, you can go through very quickly. Did that answer it?
I believe so. We have a bunch of questions lining up, so I'm going to take a few of these if you don't mind. I believe you just answered it, but, and folks, I'm taking these out of order. You can upvote these to make them a higher priority, but the first one is, how do you tag props without the tags being visible on stage, or do you not tag props? I think I heard you say labeling.
Yes. Okay. Let me switch over here to another screen, and tagging props and set pieces so that they don't appear, so the labels don't appear on screen is really important, because virtually all tags, whether it's printed by my company or somebody else, have a white tag with a barcode and a number on it. And in order for the barcode to work, it has to be a fairly high contrast. So white label, black type, so that the barcode will work. But if that's on stage and the light, one of your stage lights hits it, you can see that barcode a really long way back in the theater. So you don't want that. So there's a couple of ways to do it. If something is like, if you see here in the middle of this picture, I have furniture and small sets. If I have something on the back of a picture frame, it's not going to be seen. So you can just stick a label on it, okay, without any problem. But, or this one here, I have a sew-on tag that's applied with staples to the bottom of a chair. As long as that chair doesn't get turned upside down during the production, that'll be fine. But for something like a teapot, now I've got my teapot that you've seen at my shows forever. Here I have a teapot, and we could never have this on stage with an adhesive label stuck to the pot, because you pick it up, you turn it over, you open the top, you pour stuff out, couldn't do it. So what I suggest is to put, if you can see this, one of the inventory tags on a Tyvek label. And that Tyvek label is attached in a non-permanent way with a twist tie. So you can put the label on it while it's in storage, and then take it off when you're going to use it on stage. Now, you don't want a zillion of these hanging around because they get lost. So there's another option I have here. Hang on here, let's go. Is you can create what we call a props book. And this is a handout again that's on my website. So you can take the tags off of the item, and these are plastic pages within, that are for business cards. So you can take this tag off, stick it into a slot here, and then these pictures are business cards that you can print from, like I can do a production list here. I can go to production, I can go to Peter Pan, I can go to my props, and I've got a lot of props here that have been assigned to Peter Pan. If I come up here to the report section and I do prop lists, I can do a business cards for the prop book. So I have a production, I have all the items that are assigned to the production. I can print a report that will print out on business card stock. So some of these things you wouldn't have a tag on, but it's a good way to start. And you can, there we go. You can then print these all out, pop them out of business card stock, and then come back and then put them into the prop book with the label that you've taken off. And at the end of the production, you just take the tags off, put them back on the item, and this card will tell you where what that prop is and where it's stored, so you know where to put it. Okay?
Okay, ready for another question?
Sure.
We're going to backtrack a little bit when you're talking about the database and labeling and photographing everything. If a costume is altered for a production, would the photos and/or description need updating every time?
Let me come back here to the database here. In my database and maybe some of the others, I would highly recommend that you create a alteration record here in the database. So you can come here and you can say that it has an alteration, and you could say, sleeves shortened, and then it will have that note there with all the data. You can actually create more information here about what the alteration was and whether that alteration needs to be undone at the end. Now, once something is marked for an alteration, let me just refresh that page. Well, of course, it's not going to show it here on my screen today, but it should have a note up here at the top that says needs alterations or alterations have happened. So I think it's best if you put that information here in the alterations. You could also put it in the notes. You could also take another picture of it. In my database, you can have up to 6 photos for each item. So you could easily put in a note that, for this particular production, we made a change. Okay?
Great. Next question. Can they reorganize the order and layout of the drop-down boxes, like make less on a page?
Most of the drop-down boxes are ordered in alphabetical order. I used to have an option where you could set the sorting order for them, but I found that to be confusing for some people. So that could, if that person wants to contact me directly, we can talk about it. Again, you have to realize a database is designed so multiple people can use it. So you want to make sure all the functions are easily understood by everyone that's going to be using it. Now, some people will put a number in front of something. If we go to colors, I could say, well, I want white to be 1, and I want black to be 2, and blue to be 3, and burgundy to be 4.
Hey, Margaret.
And then I could do that, but we can talk about that more later.
Yeah, I think maybe I misunderstood or misread, interpreted that question. So I think they added not the order of the lists within the boxes, the order of the actual boxes.
Oh, the order of the fields on the screen. That would be, for my database, that would be a custom thing. And I think that would be custom for almost every database, because you design these forms very, very specifically in an order. And you can't just pick them up and rearrange them very easily, because certain things have to follow certain other things. So we could certainly talk about it. I do have some customers who request that certain fields not show because they don't really want to see some particular thing. But that's usually a custom thing, but it can be done.
Okay, unless you want to move on, there's some great questions here. We can just answer some more questions if you like.
Sure, I can answer them, or whatever you think is best.
I think we answer some questions for a while they're building up. So
Okay.
the next question is, do you suggest that the inventory numbers, tag IDs, you use a system so the number itself is informative, i.e. all men's suits get a specific number, that is the first digit in the field, then a second digit might indicate a period range, and the last set just overall count of suits, etc.
A lot of people do that. I don't personally recommend it because, number one, you want this database to last through many years and probably many different people who are looking at it. And some people have set up a system like they would start the tag ID to say MS for men's suits and then 0001. And then someone comes by 3 or 4 years later and they go, oh, I don't want to do it that way. I want to have it some other way. But now I've got a system set up. I've got a tag that's been sewn in or ironed onto the costume. And then what do we do? So I find it better just to have a straight number. But again, it can be up to the person. I mean, it's up to them. If they want to set it that way, that's fine. It just, over time, if I look at, customers I've been working with for 10 years, and they say, oh, that was so-and-so, that was their system. We have a new person in charge. They want to just do straight numbers from here on out. That's fine. But think about it, not only as the one person that's setting this up, but also for the future.
Okay, next question. If the labels aren't added until after it's photographed and the data is entered, how does the label number get paired with the rest of the entry?
Good question. I actually realized when I saw that graphic that wasn't the most recent graphic. I usually have the attachment before the data entry. But one way to do that is, let me find a picture here. On my, oops, nope, not that one. A lot of times people will not have a lot of time to actually add the tag or label to the item at that moment. So you can use a tagging gun, like a Denison tagging gun or one of the others, and you can temporarily attach the tag to the garment so that it can be attached later. So you can just put it on the front like that with one of those quick release tags, and then at a later time come back and put it in. Because actually sewing the tags on is pretty time consuming. And this is just a really quick way to do it. Then when you actually are using that particular costume, you can then put it in more permanently.
Great. Next question. How would you recommend uploading the photos into an inventory system? Do you go in after, or are they inputted in the moment, at the moment, data entry station that you described earlier?
It depends on, it depends on how you've got your data entry station set up. Most cameras and phones don't automatically connect to your computer. It's not something you can easily do. So some people will do like 10 or 12 on a, and, you know, those are stored on your SD card, and then they can be just either put into a computer right there at the photo station that's going to be linked to the photos to the computer where the data entry is, or they can just walk that SD card over, and the data entry person can put it into their laptop and work with it that way. It depends a little bit on the sophistication of the people who are doing the data entry, if they can, you know, pull that data off the SD card right away. One thing I will note is that when most photos come off cameras, phones, you know, iPads, whatever they're using to take the pictures are huge. They're like 3, 4, 5, 6, even larger megabytes, okay? And the database is this photo here. You don't want it to be 8 megabytes. Now you can display it here on the screen, but when you go to print a report that has lots and lots of photos, if they're all 3 and 4 and 5 megabytes, it's suddenly going to tell you, okay, I can't display this anymore. So let's see. Over here to the right, I can't really get there from here. Okay, this is it. You're going to have to help me with, Christine. Can I move? Oh, there we go. I can do that. Okay. In the newest version, we have a button here that says View File Size. And so you can see what the file size is. And if it's too big, you get a message saying, okay, it's too big. And so when you take the pictures, you really have to take them down to another program to resize the photos down and then add them to the database. So usually that's an extra step that happens later. Okay.
Margaret, next question. Do you have any suggestions for organizations who have a high volume of events with high equipment turnover rates? Do you check in the same equipment in and out daily?
Well, if it's really a turnover rate, if an event happens, if you have, you know, one theater production that uses equipment on one day, and then that's over, and then it comes back to the shop, and then it gets sent out for a second one, even if it's in the same theater complex, but maybe to a different theater or a different production, then yes, I would check it in and check it out every time. I mean, that's what having a barcode scanner and having everything labeled with a barcode tag makes it very easy to check things back in and check things back out again. It is a lot of work, but if you want to keep the records, that's what you've got to do.
Great, thank you. Hey, we're talking a lot about costumes, but I know your software handles other items, props, lighting, sound. So the question is, can you cover some of the functionality there is for lighting and or sound or other areas?
Of course. I had somehow closed the
I think something to share while you're looking, Margaret, if you don't mind, there's a comment here. I know you talked about inventory ID numbers and make it easy for you to use and people in the future to use. This is a curious comment that would you ever think of using a number? And then can you add letters? So it might be helpful to identify what show it is. And I'm throwing this in, they didn't write this, but would you ever put 1, 2, 3 Les Mis? Or is that Les Mis is a period? So they're just wondering about more identifiers in the tagging labeling system.
Yes, now for accessories, I often recommend that people put in an A in front of the number so that it's easily identified as an accessory. But yes, you can put letters in the front and it's fine. I don't recommend putting letters at the end because when you add a new costume piece, at least in my software, it will come up with the next number in sequence. And if there's a letter at the end, it doesn't know how to do that, so it gets kind of grumpy and gives you a message. But if it's like this one is A0011, if I do a next one, it'll be A0012. I don't recommend putting a production name in for a costume piece or prop even, because there's a chance you could use it for something else. And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, costumes that are used for the ensemble, or props that are just used as common pieces, a chair, a table. They're going to be used for something else. So you don't really want to identify something as only belonging to a production unless it could never be used for anything else. So like in Beauty and the Beast, that yellow dress that Belle wears, you're never going to use that for anything else. So that would be okay. But for the underskirt that has gone with it, well, you could use that for something else, or for, you know, a lot of the other pieces. So I would again just sort of think about, you know, not just identifying things by production unless you never break something down and use it somewhere else. Okay. Now, do you want me to go to, I'll go to equipment here.
Yes, I think you should, Margaret. Thank you.
Okay. So equipment, again, you have lighting. Oops, sorry. I thought I had that fixed. Okay, lighting items, and you have sound items and tools and consoles and things. So each one is its own module. And for lighting, you have fixtures, you have accessories, you have gobos and gel colors. So for a fixture, you can have, again, a tag ID for this particular fixture, and a fixture name, a current location, a description, and then a serial number, an asset management number, a division owner, and lots of other good things. So the fields that you want in, you know, the fields for the fixture screen are specific to fixtures. So the electrical rating, the power source, the connectors, you know, how is it rigged? A lot of different things like that. Now this, I don't have a lot of data in here, partly because I don't have a lot of understanding of lights, but I have a lot of people that have been helping me. So again, you can put in a picture if you wish, but you don't have to. But you have a lot of fields that are here. So again, you can do a search by ID, you can do a search by name, by fixture type, you can do an advanced search to be able to search for things on lots of different fields and run reports for those. Now with accessories, you know, you have things that are accessories for lights. You can put in multiple, you know, quantities of those. Because oftentimes you're not going to put an individual tag ID on an accessory. It isn't as high a value item as a fixture, so you probably may not put an individual ID on, but if you want to, that's fine as well. Now gobos, you have lots of different, you know, gobos, and the gobos, again, fields are specific to gobos and the picture. Now, the pictures are really important for gobos because you can do a report of your gobos so that you would have a photo gallery of all of the gobos that you have. Now, this one is by manufacturer. Actually, let me come back. By category. So I can categorize all of my gobos and then print a list out, and so I have a list of a good picture of each one of them. And so if someone calls up and says, hey, what have you got for, let's see, nature, or for clocks, or for something, you can have that information set in there so that it will be you know, accessible for you to know and for you to give to your customers. Okay. Now, just let you know, my software and really most everyone's software is available usually for a free trial. So you can download it from their website, my website, and give it a test to see what you've got. Gel colors, not everyone was going to inventory their gel colors, but if you want to, you can. So you can have information about the gel and the transmission and the color values and everything for that. So that's just a really, really quick idea of lighting. Sound equipment is, again, sound equipment for fields for sound equipment. So I have a speaker, I have a manufacturer, I have a serial number, I have suppliers, I have any other details I want to have for that. So again, you can track the repairs, the rental history, what productions you've used it in, and so forth. All right, does that answer those questions?
I believe so. So Margaret, hold on, let me turn my camera on. Let me ask you a question, Margaret. I don't know how long your PowerPoint is. You still have plenty of audience here. We are running longer than we thought. Not a problem. We've got some good questions piled up here. How many slides do you have left? And I'm just trying to set a good timeline for us to finish your slides, your presentation, and balance the amount of questions we have.
I have 12 more slides, but we can go through them relatively quickly, and then we can answer more questions as they come up, I think.
Why don't we go through your slides to see if they answer some of these questions? If you don't mind, folks, if we don't get to your question, Margaret will get a list of these questions, and she might be able to respond, or you guys can go back and forth with her directly if you had more specific questions. Again, we'll try to take up some more questions today, but we'd like to see if her presentation answers any of these things. So Margaret, why don't you continue with your presentation for now?
Okay. So we were talking about the parts of your plan here, and so you need software that we've just sort of looked at some examples there, but you also need identifying tags and labels. A lot of people, when we first started inventory systems, say, oh, I don't really need to have a tag because I know what it is. I can look at that, I know what it is. But in fact, you're not the only person using this system, and again, you may have, 50 pairs of black pants. You may have 25 oak, dining room table chairs. How do you know which one you want and what it is? So it's really, really important for you to have some kind of inventory tag or label. Now, I'm going to show you one here if you can sort of see here. This is a coat, a little coat that I made my daughter a long time ago. But anyway, it has a tag in here that has the identifying name of the theater or your company at the top, and then a barcode and the number. So it's not very easy to see, but on my, I'm going to pop over here to sample inventory tags, you can see here, and you can see these more clearly on my website. I'm also happy to send you sample tags and labels as well. But if you have you have your name up here, an ID, barcode, and the tag ID, you can quickly identify it. If this coat goes out on a rental, there's no question when someone picks it up and looks at it, who does it belong to? So the minimum I find is your company or your college or your theater name and a barcode. Some people like to have their website address. Some people like to have a line under it so they can write the size. Some people do put storage location on there. I find that's not always helpful because over time you have to move your storage location, and so the names change. But you have to also think that you have different kinds of items, so you need different kinds of tags and labels. So for some costumes, you can have an iron-on tag, but sometimes those are too big, so you need a tiny one. Or you need a sew-in tag for fabrics that are more delicate. Or for wigs, you need a tiny little tag that can go in the wig. For hats and purses, you need an adhesive label. For shoes, you need a really sticky adhesive label so it will stay in. For jewelry and other things, you may want to put a tag of other kinds on there. For your props, you're going to have, again, we talked about this a little bit, but you're going to have adhesive labels that go right on the item. You're going to have to say, okay, now I need some others that go on a tag because I want to take it off. Or I've got soft goods like curtains or bedspreads or rugs or pillows. I need to have an iron-on tag or a sew-on tag, or a really big iron-on tag for my rugs that I can apply with rivets. So you need to think about all the different things that you have in order to figure out what you need. And you're not going to get it right the first time. You're going to order something, use them up, and go, oh, okay. Now the next time I need to order something more or a little different to make things work. And again, for equipment, we have different labels, different sizes, different kinds of adhesive that will work for different things. So for your tags and labels, you have to think about what you want and start, calling lots of different manufacturers and say, send me free samples and see what works for you, okay? Computer equipment. Do you have a PC or a Mac, or do you want it online? Do you want to share it on a network? Do you need access from multiple devices and different locations? Maybe your warehouse is in a different building than your actual day-to-day workshop. How much IT support do you have? Okay, is the IT department really ready and willing to come help you set up this database or maintain things? Can you get more IT support if you need it? If your tags have barcodes, which they should, you will need a scanner for each computer. And there's different kinds of barcode scanners. So again, this takes a little bit of research, figuring all of this kind of thing out so that you can be prepared. Your storage location, how are things organized now? How would you like to change it? Do you need more racks or shelves or bins? Do you need ladders? Is your theater planning a move soon? I have a lot of people call me and say, okay, I've just been told we're moving in 2 years. I need to get this inventory before we go. And then you have to plan for what you're going to have in the new location. Another question is, does your storage area meet fire codes? You do not want to have your whole thing set up and then have the fire marshal come in and say, oh, you've got too much stuff in this room. You need to get rid of 30% of it. So try and figure that out as you're working through your collection. And budget, okay? All parts of the plan require money. Where can you get the money? Do you have an existing budget? Can you write a grant? Can you ask for donations? Can your rental program pay for it? How much do you need? When will the funds be available? How can you get more income to support the inventory system? Now, I have on my website here a sample budget. It's just a really simple spreadsheet, but it sort of lays out all the different sections and helps you start to fill in some of the blanks so you can start coming up with that. Because when you go to ask someone about spending money, they're going to say, well, what are you going to spend it on? How much do you really need? Do you really need to have that much money? Well, if you have it all lined out in a spreadsheet, you'll be much better off. Okay. All right, so the next thing is make decisions and stick to them. You've come up with you've done a lot of research, you've come up with items that you want, and write it all down. Come up with a list, investigate the software or database that you want to use, test a variety of tags and labels from different manufacturers, check if your current computers meet your needs. Okay, a lot of times they won't. If it's a really old computer, you may not have enough memory. It may be so slow that it will drive you crazy. You have to, make sure it has the right operating system and the right software for you. And then you can start getting things ready and get ready to buy the software, the hardware, the tags and label, the scanner, and so forth. Then what we need to do is you need to become the expert. You need to understand what software you're using. You need to learn, figure out the system for applying your tags and labels. You need to make decisions of where the tags and labels go on each garment. You need to practice taking photos, set up a photo station in the corner of your shop. and make a floor plan of where costumes are or will be stored. So each, you know exactly the name of the rack, you know how you're going, what you're going to call it, so that when you go to enter the data, it's very simple. Now, I also have a system called a program called Become the Expert Lessons, which is on my website, which is a free online class to talk about understanding, you know, what tags and labels are, you know, what the numbering system is and what you have to think about, what databases are, and a lot of different things. You're welcome to go to my website at costumeinventory.com and go to support and look for Become the Expert Lessons. And you can do lessons and send them to me. I'll review them and get back to you on them so that it helps you think about things. You can also have your students do them as well. But on my system, I have, on my website, I have a bunch of resource guides so that you can look at things. Even if you don't use my software or tags, there's some resource guides that can help you with things. For my software, I do have a user guide. There's a little user guide here that's online you can look at and work on things. Then once you've got everything, you need to train everyone. Gather your training materials and have them available. Download the data entry guidebook to teach your students. Well, what's the data entry guidebook? The data entry guidebook is a PDF that I have on my website that you can then print out. It's a free PDF. You can print it out and put it in a binder. Here's a picture of it. And it's a PDF that is a lot of things I collected from different parts of the web, but it has, the first section is examples of garment types. Again, you have students or volunteers and you want them to inventory things best. You want them to be able to describe things well, and you don't want to have to sit there and explain every single thing. So this has some pictures of garment types: dresses, bottoms, tops, skirts, outerwear. And now these pictures are old. Some wonderful person drew them a long time ago, but they get the idea across. You certainly can update this and make it better for your students, but this is a good starting point. So you can download this and have it available to your students or anyone. A lot of times I find students don't know what the parts of a garment are. What's a placket? You know, what's a dart and that sort of thing. What's the difference between men's and women's garments? So there's lots of different pieces in here in the data entry user guide. How to measure a garment to figure out the size. Here's some size charts to use. Here's some different color patterns to identify what the fabric is. What's the difference between a herringbone and a tweed? You know, a lot of people who haven't seen that before don't know. So this is just a simple guide to do. It also has some blank pages at the end where you can put in fabric samples. So you can, if I can get that to go anyway, you can cut out and put in fabric samples so that, again, people can understand what's the difference between a cotton and a muslin and a denim and a twill. So that's an idea for you there. So you can download that data entry guidebook to help your students and volunteers. Then set aside training for each new student or volunteer. Teach everyone where tags should be applied and where, how the tag should be applied and where they should go. The goal is consistency. Now, let me just pop back here. I've got this really sort of hokey little worksheet here, but it's good to print this out and have it available for your staff. One thing you don't want to do is have one person put a tag in the, like the back of the neck in a shirt, and another one put it down here at the tail on the shirt tail. Because if you're always looking for it at the back and you don't find one, you think, oh, this doesn't have a tag, I'll put in another one. And suddenly you've got tags in 2 different numbers in 2 different places, and it's hard to find. The same thing with jackets. If you're going to put it in the inside, make sure you can put it a place where it's not going to be seen if someone takes off their jacket and drapes it over a chair during a production. So figure out on, you know, basic things where you want those tags to go and make sure everybody knows that. And then reward your staff and your volunteers. Tell them how much you appreciate their hard work, because it is a lot of work. And if people don't feel appreciated, then they get less enthusiastic about the project. Okay, then look critically at your storage area. Decide how best to store your items. Do you want to have on hangers, in plastic bins, on hooks on the wall, some sort of shelving? Look at the way you have it now may not be what you want in the future. If you're doing this big inventory project, it's a good time to really look at this and say, I need this better. You know, I want to have bins here. I want to have a number on the bin. I want to have a list on front of the bin of what the contents are. You know, and then maybe, gosh, I need more bins, or maybe I need more racks to put those on. And then again, know your fire department regulations. Keep ample space between costumes and walls and ceilings. Have wide walkways. And then again, as you're reviewing your storage area, you're going to come across things. You're going to say, oh, this is really too bad. I don't want to keep this anymore. Maybe I can use this time to get rid of things that are not going to be production worthy. Maybe I want to take a picture of it so I have a record of it, but I'm not going to actually keep it. Then set up your schedule and get started. So I like to set up a timeline. So I'm going to set up a timeline. I'm going to have time to, you know, start my proposal. I'm going to make estimates. I'm going to review my software. I'm going to get my money. I'm going to, you know, get going. You know, make sure my tags and labels and my computer have arrived. Make sure the storage area is cleaned and ready to work in, and make sure there's no productions or builds happening at the same time. So having a timeline is really helpful to get you started. You know what it is, other people can know what it is, and so there's no confusion. Then, of course, you need to contact your staff and students to determine their availability. Make and publish your schedule so everyone knows what's happening, and then review all the resource guides to help you plan for the day you start inventorying everything. So again, most people have to do a proposal to start an inventory project. So what do you want to include in that proposal? First, do the numbers. How many productions? How many students are served? Then outline your benefits to the school, your theater, to your students, to your community. Show your plan, what hardware and software you need, what tags you need. Do a priority list of what's going to be inventoried first, because you can't inventory everything right away. So do a priority. Explain what trading is available and how they will be traded. Show your schedule. Show the people who are committed to help. Show a timeline when everything is going to be ready. Show your budget. Prepare your spreadsheet. And then summarize why you need this project now, the benefits versus the cost, and your willingness and commitment to the project. So again, a proposal like this will help you get a long way towards getting what you need. So once you have an inventory set, you'll be able to set up your database and have the data you want. You'll be able to create a record for everything. You will be able to assign an inventory ID number to an item and include your photos, your storage location, your costs, your rental fees. You'll be able to apply your tags and labels to each item and put them away in their storage, their assigned place. So once you have everything done, you have time to create a production that is full of costumes, props, and lighting, and lots of other things. And that's our goal, is to make it easier for you to have your productions and have everything that you need in the right place at the right time. So if you have questions, you can contact me. This is just my information that you can contact me at any time, and I am ready to answer more questions when you have them, Christy.
Great. We still have 100 attendees with us today, so they're holding on your every word. So there were 3 questions that I'm going to try to put together, so forgive me for paraphrasing, folks. But in multiple parts, can this software be shared and shared online, but does it also have different permission levels like edit versus check in and check out. So you can share with the designer to pick stock items, but you don't want them to have the ability to go in and change anything accidentally or purposely.
Excuse me. My cranberry juice went down the wrong tube there. My database, excuse me, is a Microsoft Access database. And so it can be run on a single PC or it's shared on a network. And that's a local area network that would be set up within your school or your theater or your organization. So yes, it can be shared in that way. So I've got some handouts on that show how to share the database and set that up. It is not, it's not designed to be shared online. Microsoft Access has never really been a good online system. And Microsoft has never really come through with that. So as far as an online system, no, it can't be. But what you can do is you can go in any of the advanced search items. Let's say I want to look at just dresses again. I can do a search results, and I can do a search results with photos, and I can save this to a PDF and then email that to someone or put that on my website. So there's a lot of different reports that I can do that I can put on a PDF and share that on the website. Sometimes I can do a report by production and list everything that's for that production and have that displayed on the website and look at that. Now, as far as setting up user permissions, I can come into my application setup. I know I went through that a little fast, but just appreciate that you can get into setup and I can require my users to log in. So it says, do you want to require users to log in? I can say yes, and it will come back and say, oh, login is now required. Please make sure you have at least one person with administrator access before moving on. So once I can come into a staff screen here, and so I can say that, okay, I am an administrator, and so I can do everything. But I have a student named Yogi Bear, who is a wonderful bear, but he's not very good at data entry. So I don't want him to mess up with the database. So I can assign him a record as read-only. And so he can go in and look at things, he can search for things, he can report things out, but he can't change any data. But then I've got George Jetson here as a rental clerk. So I can assign him a value of a rental clerk. Now George can't go in and create new costume or prop or lighting records, but he can create a rental record. And so he can go in and create rental records, print out receipts, check things out, check things in, but is limited on what they can do. So you see you have several different options you can set up here. And then I also have a data entry staff option as well. So within the database, yes, you can control who can have access, and each one would log out. Actually, I can do that real quick. So I've turned that on, and when I restart the database, it'll come up and ask me who I am. So I'm going to log in as Yogi, and Yogi is already identified as read-only. So I can go in here to costume pieces, and I can come in here and I can look at this, okay, but I can't make any changes. So I can come up here and I can, do whatever I want, but this record is marked as read-only. You can see it's read-only up here at the top. Okay, and then I could log out and I could log in as myself again. If I remember my password there, and then I could go in here And now I can make a change to theater and have that change stay. Okay.
Okay. Sorry, I had my cat talking to me for a second. So the read only, that, and I heard you talk about Yogi can build a list or an inventory. So I would assume
Not
that.
quite. No,
Oh, sorry.
Yogi can do a search. Yogi can search for data, and he can print records out, but he can't add or change any data.
Of course. So would that be like allowing somebody to browse the collection and make a shopping list or a request list?
Yes. Yes, they could do that. I don't have a way to actually select individual. Well, actually, I do. I do have a way to select individual items and make a list. I'm sorry, I could do that. You actually do that on your advanced. You search individual items. Once you've selected an item, you could then select 2 or 3 items, you know, whatever you want, and then you can see that list of selected items, and then you can print that list out.
Great. I think 1 or 2 more questions, Margaret, if you're still available for a bit.
Sure.
Does this work on an iPad?
No, like I said, this works on Windows only. So you can use it on a PC. You could use it on a Microsoft Surface, which has a Windows operating system, but the iPad has a different operating system. Now, there are ways to set up a computer at your theater or your school that is essentially a dial-in station, and there are ways that you could connect your iPad to that station, but the database is really running on that workstation. The iPad is just a mirror to that, and it can be kind of slow and kind of not terribly great, but it is there are ways, but primarily this is a PC based application. But there are other companies that have online systems. They just have different features and different costs and all that. You have to look that up.
Okay, next question. Is there a way to include, or I guess track, a piece that was used in a show, just like the drop down for color or type of costume it is?
Yes, down here on this tab down at the bottom, there's a tab for productions. So you can identify an item that has been used in a production here, and then you can go to that production by clicking on the view button, and you can see all the costume pieces that have been used in that production and print reports. Now that one isn't very exciting. I have a bunch of other things here for Annie. Now, you'd never use these particular costumes in Annie, but still, you get the idea. I can assign them to that production in the costume piece, or I could assign an item here to a production from here, and then print a list of costume pieces, and I would have a list there. You can even do a photo gallery to see a picture of each one of them, so you can see them. Okay.
Okay, it looks like we have 1 more question, Margaret. So somebody says,
Okay.
We're backtracking a little in time here, but what if a tag fell off? Can you search the item by description and then print a new tag, or?
Well, you certainly can search for an item by the ID, but also by name or description here. So if I came and looked for a blue and yellow dance dress, I could certainly find it that way. I can also do a search in my advanced search and search for it all through these different types of fields here. Category, color, type, you know, hem length, size, storage location, anything of those things. So I can search for it that way. Now, if the tag has been lost, or as in a couple of cases, actors have cut out tags, which is not great. The tags that I print that go into costumes are these tags here, are special nylon polyester tags that are printed on a thermal transfer printer so that they can be washable and dry cleanable. There aren't any tags that you can print yourself on like a regular laser printer or inkjet printer that have got the durability to stay through that washing and dry cleaning. So usually what you would do is, there's two choices. One, you contact your manufacturer of that particular tag and ask them for replacements, which I provide to all my customers, but I don't reply them, don't have to do it very often because they stay in very well. But if I come here, I could also just change that tag ID. So I could say this is 998, whoops. All right, numlock was off. Okay, 99782 or 754. I could change that number and put in a new tag for that particular item. So whichever is easiest for you to do.
Okay, one more question. Actually, we have a comment here. Maybe you want to comment on as well. Somebody humbly suggests that when you take photos of costumes, you may want to set it up with a high-vis tape measure in the photo, so you can easily see the size, especially for kid theater costumes or props. I suppose anything that makes your database easier to use, more accessible would be great.
I do recommend using a ruler for props, because that's really something very important to do. I can see that it would be a very good idea for costumes as well, especially for kids' costumes, because the length can be, kind of questionable in terms of, well, how big is this really? So yes, I highly recommend it if you've got a very good ruler that is easy to read from a distance. I actually in the jewelry database, which is brand new, I have used pictures. I have used a ruler in a lot of these, because with jewelry, now of course I'm not going to find one. It's very hard to know how big something is. So I highly recommend that for small items and props and jewelry. And again, they're not showing up because I don't have the pictures on here. But you would, if you had a small ruler right here at the bottom of the picture, it's really helpful. So I definitely agree on that.
Excellent. Margaret, why don't you go back to your contact slide, the very last slide, so we can remind people how to get in touch with you if they have questions after this. We will supply Margaret with a list of our questions in case she wants to answer them in greater detail. I think we're done for this evening. Thank you all for staying. Lots of information, Margaret. Thank you. Very informative. Margaret's one of our favorite exhibitors, and you can see her hopefully in Columbus, Ohio next year in March. And with that, I'm going to say thank you, Margaret. Everybody, attendees, we hope that you enjoyed the session today, and we look forward to welcoming you back to another one of our online education and training sessions in the near future. At the completion of this webinar, you'll be directed to complete a short survey. Please do me a favor and take the time to fill that out. We want to ensure we are providing the best content possible. Please be sure to complete this survey if you have a moment. Once again, thank you for joining us for today's Forum at 4. On behalf of us, all of us at USITT, we wish you all the best. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.